A Boy Scout hiking in the Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park got separated from his troop and couldn't be found before nightfall. While the rangers looked at a map for a few minutes, one ranger traced a few lines, looked at the map, and then tapped his finger on a meadow and he said, "Go land a helicopter there tomorrow morning. That's where he'll be." Sure enough, the scout came running out of the woods after the helicopter landed in that meadow the next day. Now, this story isn't about the boy who went missing. It's about that ranger and when he went missing himself. When morning broke on July 21, 1996, Randy Morgenson was midway through his 28th season as a backcountry ranger at Sequoia Kings Canyon National Parks. He was the most senior ranger in the High Sierra and the wise man of the woods, or the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the high country. To most, he seemed to be immune to the hazards of remote wilderness travel. After loading his pack, the robust 64-year-old veteran went on a routine patrol from his station near Bench Lake, and he was never seen again. For more than 40 years, Randy had lived and worked among the granite peaks of the Sierra Nevada, patrolling the high country, rescuing stranded hikers, and protecting the wilderness that he loved. When he disappeared, his friends and fellow rangers were stunned. Randy wasn't just familiar with the backcountry, he was synonymous with the backcountry to them. 5 years would pass before they would have any answers. Randy Morgenson joined the National Park Service in the 1960s. He was part of a unique group of rangers known as backcountry rangers, people who would spend months at a time living in remote cabins or tents, monitoring vast wilderness areas, far from roads, trails, or visitors. He worked in the Sequoia Kings Canyon National Parks, a region often described as some of the most rugged and spectacular terrain in the lower 48 states. Now, Randy was known for his deep connection with the land. He was fluent with the rhythms of the mountains, where the snow would melt and the creeks ran high, and which meadows would bloom first. Randy was so in sync with the mountains, said Alden Nash, a retired sub-district ranger and Randy's former supervisor, that he could look at a missing person's known whereabouts on a topographic map, consider the terrain and how it pulls at a person, and then make a judgment call with astounding accuracy. Randy's career was filled with stories of ranger lore. It was a life he'd literally been bred for. He grew up in Yosemite National Park, where he'd assisted Ansel Adams, lugging around the famous photographer's heavy, large-format tripod. He had joined the Peace Corps and had been stationed in India, where he learned high-altitude mountaineering and expedition planning from the Sherpa. He had been a winter ranger in Yosemite's Tuolumne Meadows, a Nordic ranger at Badger Pass, and for 28 years he was a seasonal backcountry ranger at Sequoia and Kings Canyon. He was also an avid writer and photographer, and his journals described the backcountry as not a job site, but as a sacred place. By the mid-1990s, Randy was in his mid-50s and widely respected within the National Park Service, but privately he was struggling. He had been married for years to his wife Judy, but their relationship was deteriorating. He confided in friends that he felt lonely and uncertain about the future. Some described him as tired, both physically and emotionally. One friend and coworker, David Grabber, thought he noticed signs of depression when speaking with Randy before his disappearance. Randy used to love talking about the wildflowers in the High Sierra, but when David pushed the conversation in that direction, Randy replied, "I don't find much pleasure in the flowers anymore." And then he added, after all these years of being a ranger, I really wonder if it's all been worth it." Grabber said that chilled him to the core. Still, in 1996, Randy returned for another summer season. Based in the Bench Lake Ranger Station, one of the most isolated posts in the Sierra, from there he patrolled an area stretching dozens of miles in every direction. On July 21st, he made a routine radio call to a fellow ranger. It was short, professional, and it gave no indication of distress. Now, this was the last time anyone heard from him. He ended the conversation with an "I won't be bothering you anymore," but they didn't think much of this at the time. When Randy failed to appear for a scheduled meeting with another ranger a few days later, the Park Service immediately initiated a search. Teams of rangers and volunteers began covering the patrol area, a maze of steep ridges and canyons and high passes. Helicopters flew search grids, scanning for any sign of movement or for bright-colored gear. At his ranger station, they found his equipment neatly organized, his logbook was open, and his food and supplies were untouched. There was no note, there was no sign of struggle, and no clear direction of travel. Over the next several weeks, the search expanded to cover more than 150 square miles of wilderness in the area it was determined that Randy was most likely to be. Rangers used dogs, aircraft, and even mountaineering teams to check the hazardous terrain. In his logbook, Randy had twice reported going south on the John Muir Trail to Pinchot Pass, once to the summit and a second time over the top to Woods Creek. Leaning on their knowledge of Randy's habits as a ranger, they deduced that it was unlikely he had gone that direction again, either via the John Muir Trail or any cross-country routes that eventually met up with it to the south. On the other hand, Randy had not yet been to Lake Basin, which they knew was a sacred place for him. Nor had he covered the cross-country routes in Upper Basin or visited the tucked-away gems north of Bench Lake, including Dumbbell Lakes and Marion Lake. With these observations, the Rangers threw out ideas and probable distances and places Randy might have visited on the 3 to 4 day patrol. Unfortunately, they didn't find anything. Days turned to weeks, weeks turned to months, and months to years, and there was no sign of Randy Morgenson. After all the massive effort, no trace of Randy was found. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Now, the Park Service eventually suspended the search. Officially, his disappearance was noted as missing, presumed deceased. For the next 5 years, the case remained open but cold. Then, in 2001, 2 trail crew members in a remote area called Window Creek made a gruesome discovery. Beneath a small rock slide, they found a weathered clothing and an old pack, and further downstream, partially submerged in the stream, they found a boot. When they ventured closer, they found it contained a human bone. Nearby lay a rusted radio, fragments of Park Service uniform, and his backpack were also found. Dental records confirmed that the remains did in fact belong to Randy Morgenson. Investigators determined that Randy had likely slipped and fallen from the cliffs above or broken through a snow bridge above the creek. The steep and unstable terrain in that area made it easy for a fall to go unseen and difficult for search teams to locate him in 1996. His body came to rest beneath the loose rock, which explained why it was hidden from several of the ground searches. The Fresno County Coroner's Office officially ruled the death accidental. Speculation still remains, though, as some rangers felt they had searched the terrain in the immediate time and area of the disappearance and found nothing, specifically on the spot where the radio was found. In the end, it appeared to be a tragic accident, one that took the life of the most experienced rangers in the Sierra Nevada, but questions did remain. Today, there's a small memorial plaque honoring Randy Morgenson in Kings Canyon National Park. His story remains a reminder of the immense scale and power of the wilderness, even for those who know it best. And it's another example of when people go missing in the wilderness and they're not found or not found for a long time, how much the wilderness and the remote area and the amount of time that passes between when people go missing and when they're found, even if they are found dead, how little answers we have, because it's not a crime scene or a scene that you can very quickly gain an understanding of what happened, because things are moved around and decompose, and it's just impossible to figure out what could have gone down and what actually did happen to anyone who's gone missing so long ago, even when their remains are found. Now, in this case, it does seem like it is most likely an Occam's razor situation, where what is most likely is what happened. There are some rangers who questioned that they would have found him, they would have found his radio or something, because they did search that area. But it's so difficult to find things, especially in remote wilderness, and it's likely that they would have scoured the area but still didn't find any sign of Randy. And it's very possible that he could have fallen through a snow bridge, given his mental state, I mean, maybe with depression and a lot of things on his mind, he was less careful than he would have been in times past. And there's still speculation whether or not he took his own life, but that's all it is speculation, because people are wondering, based on his mental state, if he would have tried to do that. But there's no sign in anything that anyone has found that is the case, and it's probably more likely that it really was an accident. But kind of leave it up to you to decide what you think it could be. And either way, Randy is a clear example of a life of dedication to the national park and to serving and preserving the areas that we can use to do things outside and to recharge. And hopefully he's remembered for that and not only for his disappearance. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you've made it all the way to the end here, please click on other videos, subscribe, like the video, and I will catch you on the trails. Cheers.